Wow. Wow, wow, wow. All right, so big thing. I'm SHC gay. A lot of people probably have never really heard of me, probably don't know who I am. And I'm also an idiot because my mic was muted. So I'll kind of go over some things that you need to know about me coming from like the perspective that I'm going from. Number one, I'm an esports coach here in Colorado. I've been coaching for Smash for like 3 or 4 years or so. I coach at Colorado College, and one of my big goals for the colleges is to try to find a way to put the efforts together for us to all be good at what we do when we're playing against somebody else. I want to see Colorado win as much as possible, you know? I believe in the students. I love the students. But on top of that, if you don't know who I am, I also used to have Player of the Week in Colorado Smash, where I pay attention to the individuals themselves, not necessarily stats, not necessarily wins, but more of like who they are in the community. Rather it's a streamer, rather it's a player, rather it's somebody that's showing some type of like, I don't know, good personality, or if it's a player that's doing something bigger than they normally would do. I love to point that out. Back when I was the founder of HLG, I also used to be on the PR. I was on the PR panel for Smash 4, and I was one of the top players for Smash 4 in the Springs in terms of like the overall. Ultimate, I'm not as active, but the plan is in 2023 to be a lot more active. You'll see me a lot more, especially in Denver, rather it's the mid-weekly, rather it's Friday, whatever the case may be. But because I'm coming from a person who's studying from the outside in, I figure I give my own insight, and I know that Twitter is not the place to do that, because if you go to Twitter and you talk to people from that angle or that perspective, there's not enough characters to have a real conversation. It usually just turns into throwing your opinion in somebody's face, offensive, whatever takes place. So I figure if I'm going to do this, I do this in a space that is, I guess, controlled. I'm just kind of, throwing out my 2 cents. You don't have to agree with it. It'd be lovely if you came in and listened. If you don't come in and listen, that's also fine. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't expect much from it. But I do want to kind of go over the beginning stages, like the stuff that's not that big of a deal, the intermediate stages of like why a scene would be dying. And that's kind of controversial. And then the big things that I've noticed, and this is just from like the perspective of the world and why those are important. So obviously some of the beginning stage stuff, very, very simple, very borderline stuff. And it just revolves around like the why you're there in the first place. So I feel like we're all there for some type of reason. It's not always to be the best contender. It's not always to be number one or to beat all these people or nothing like that. But it's more for the purpose of just, I don't know, enjoying the fact that people are around you and they enjoy the same thing that you enjoy. And yes, Ninja Princess, you can see me. But being around people that enjoy the same thing you enjoy, that's the number one thing about a community. It's being able to get out of that sheltered environment of staying in your house all day and not playing games online, and being able to see these people in person. And that always brings a different type of joy and a different type of energy to people. You know what I mean? Like, you can compete in this game online, which I kind of advise not to, because it's a different game, but it's not the same. You feel alone. It's always empty. All it's really about at the end of the day for that is the result. But if you're like trying to understand people in the conglomerate and, other people that love the game, maybe they have other hobbies, maybe you're trying to make friends, going to like a public place is your best bet. And so a reason why someone would stop going to a public place usually starts with internal problems. Like they found something that they rather do, or they fell out of love with the game or the concept of what they're doing. And that's all extremely normal. That's not based. That's just life, man. You know what I mean? You jump in, you compete, you love to compete or whatever. You jump out, you don't want to compete. It is what it is. And I mean, there's a lot of people like that, especially because a lot of the Smash 4 people, that means they've been playing for like 7, close to 8 years. That's a long time to be going to weeklies or going to tournaments back to back to back. You know what I mean? So for a person to be burnt out on something like that, that just makes complete and total sense. And it's not like a deep theory craft or anything like that. The second thing that happens is you just feel like you hit like a certain area where you can't pass like a breach. You know what I mean? You keep running into the same competitors because if it's a weekly, it's going to be seeded a certain way, and you're going to run into certain people. And if you don't show any progression and those people are still going to the same tournaments, then your opponents will typically be the same thing. And I get how some people get burnt out on that because redundancy to me is like the evilest thing. I hate redundancy. I hate repetition. I hate going through the same thing over and over again. So I get why people would leave for that reason and for that cause. And that's going to shrink a scene no matter how prominent the scene is, no matter how great the scene is. People come and go for that cause pretty frequently. And I've seen a lot of people do that. I've seen them kind of go through the same routine of everything and they burn out. And some of it is based off of who they're playing. But I think the second half of it is not understanding that when you're not there, there's some type of work that you have to do to figure out a way around your problem. Competitions are weird because we're given the even basis of how we're going to compete, but we're not all given the same talents. Some players understand, adapt, and comprehend the game in ways that other players can never imagine. And if you're both playing outside a bracket the same amount of time as you are inside, then the person who's talented has a higher chance of taking their talents to some other level. Whereas like the person who doesn't have those gifts naturally, I mean, you're not doing enough to like basically extend it into a talent. I call it a gifted talent. You can call it skills, but I call it a gifted talent because your efforts turn basically into some type of physical gift of like, now you can do this because you put in the work. I notice a lot of players typically hit this point where they hit bracket right and they run into an opponent, they lose, and the biggest thing that they say frequently is like, oh, I know what to do for next time. Like, I got him next time. I get it. I understand what happened. And then do zero to retain that information. They don't write a single note. They don't make a video. They don't look at footage. They don't play against nobody. They don't play against even a bot, something. They don't do anything to like show that they're trying to make sure it resonates, so then the next time they see that same thing, they can overcome that problem. And not doing anything usually leads into the same problem over and over again. So saying that like you're supposed to be someone greater for doing absolutely nothing and looking for a reward for doing nothing leads into a problem. So that's a lot of the reason for why people typically don't, they don't want to go anymore, because at the end of the day, why bother? Especially if you're treating it like, this was just a hobby. It's just something that I do to have fun. If you're not having fun with it anymore, that's another reason why you wouldn't go. That's not that big of a deal. And I'd say those are like the most borderline whatever reasons. And I get all those. I think some people burn out and they come back. I think some people just decide they're about some other life. I think some people look for a certain intensity and they don't get it. Because that's another thing. You could be bored with beating everybody. I've seen people want to quit because it's too easy. You're number one, and then you're number one again, and then you're number one again. You're first, but you don't feel like you've ever earned the win. You just keep beating the same people because they refuse to learn. Which, causes the problem of like whoever's at top. I don't blame them for not wanting to learn or expand or grow or anything like that, because who wants to suffer that redundancy? Some people say they do, but they don't really understand that like being first really means being alone. Very deep note to hit with this song in the background, but being first typically means being alone. Just because there's no one who shares first place. First place is first place. So I get people who get bored and they kind of get drained from just doing the same thing over and over again in a positive light. Sometimes they want to move on and see if they can do something bigger, and most of them typically go out of state or whatever. But if you don't have the drive to do that, then what? You got to find some type of drive, because if you don't have something driving you to a purpose of doing something, then nothing's going to happen. And I mean, if you've been doing this for 7 years and you finally hit your stride of being number one, I don't blame you for like stopping, because I mean, you hit the goal. There's nothing to strive for unless you're trying to go bigger than that. And in most cases, I mean, it's expensive. There's a lot more you have to do. So there's a lot of work. And if you were carried by talent and now you got to like try, I don't blame you. So, like I said, those are your typical basic reasons. Just getting burnt out on the same repetitive stuff, or not necessarily finding what you're looking for, just growing out of it, whatever the case may be. That's going to be your basic reasons. Those aren't something I don't get why people go above and beyond to celebrate it and say, yo, anyone who was in CO Smash who doesn't go to weeklies and got a job, you know what I mean, you killing it. Like, you're not really doing anything. They're saying it as if they came out of like rehab or something. It's not a drug. It's addicting. It's fun, but it's because it's a social environment. That's what it's supposed to be. Why are you talking to them as if like they really overcame some type of generational curse that's plagued them for 120 years? Bro, they just stopped going to tournaments. They didn't really do anything. And I hate when people like strive about it, but then like they're kind of doing worse than just like the personal aspect. So you got like all that time back, but you didn't really do anything with it. Everyone has their ways of burning the clock, and if that's your way of burning the clock, then like I don't get why someone has to like go out of their way to make sure you feel like relieved, like, oh man, you gave away the heroin that is Smash, or it's so toxic. I never understood that. So that's the basic stuff, right? Intermediate stuff is more like you have some type of resentment towards the game, or towards something within that realm. Yeah, again, finally overcoming that crippling addiction. How dare you have fun, realize you're having too much fun, and someone's like, you need to have fun in a different way, otherwise life is over. I don't understand that. I mean, if you were there for a purpose, you're there for a purpose. If you served your purpose, you served your purpose. Just move on, have fun. You don't need to write a fucking book about it and be like, this is how I got over the hardest part of my life. I just could not stop playing Sonic and Smash, and it was just a really tough time in my life where I would go to bracket after bracket and friend's house after friend's house. Like, what are you talking about? If anything, that's you finally putting an effort towards something that you care about. And if that's the case, you just got to learn how to do that with the next thing you care about, so that you always grow in the things that you care about. Who wants to be like a square or a loser or a nobody in something that they care about? Everyone wants some type of recognition or some type of like payment, and life isn't fair. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It's not easy to like find the thing that you love and be able to do it to a point where you can sustain. You know, if someone's playing Smash and they're sustaining their life, I mean, kudos to them. So that's one of the intermediate things, is like treating it like you got over a drug addiction, and then hating the game and putting yourself through that pain is another one. Because I think some of these people are so, they don't realize they can just let go. But I don't blame them. Like, let's say you came into the scene and you didn't really have a social life. Yeah, I do stream. I kept it on the low, Kova, because I didn't have a camera or nothing like that. So I figure once I get the camera, I start to branch out more. Probably start doing some like Smash lessons and stuff like that. By the way, I think Kova's a great intermediate like example of like why you would leave. Or I guess beginner. You found a different purpose. I heard about your proposal. Congratulations, by the way. I'm pumped for you. I'm excited for you. I've seen you grow from like ground one or ground zero, where you used to be the annoying kid. But I mean, I hold a lot of respect for you. You're extremely smart, you're extremely patient, and you're a person that knows what it is to show passion for something. So glad to have you in the chat. And you know, I'm talking about the thing that I think a lot of people probably should talk about and should probably make some type of content about if they're going to be that adamant about it. But yeah, anyways, intermediate is you got a hatred towards the game. You feel like something is holding a gun to your head. But again, it's probably just coming from the fact that you don't have a social aspect. You know what I mean? You come out of school and nothing really gears you up to know how to talk to adults. And with COVID happening and how this world operates, I'm not going to lie, I don't blame you for not knowing what to do. And when you find something you can latch onto, you're going to latch onto it. But if you have like your frustrations within the game, typically my whole thing would be like, you know, I could try to coach you and reverence you in like which way you should go. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the end all be all, the solution to your problem, because the solution could be something really, really mundane. You know what I mean? But if it scratches at you and it caves at you, but you don't want to lose your friends because this is what you do, then you're in an emotional dilemma all the time. You're doing something you don't want to do, and you're hoping to God your friends just get invested into something else. So, I mean, a scene dying because you don't like the game, I mean, it is what it is, man. I think it's probably better if you always find something you want to do, because no matter what, if you're looking into something you want to do, you're always going to find somebody. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I appreciate that too, Kova. I see I'm slipping. I'm behind. But I don't really pay attention to social media like that. Still, congratulations on the marriage. And I like the real life stuff. I mean, I respect that. Sounds like you're building some type of foundation for yourself. But yeah, like, I mean, if you're gonna hit a point where you feel like you're not, the what ifs, then that might be the problem. You just need to let go. And I mean, I don't think letting go on social media is a smart idea, because the more you let go on social media and the more you vent on social media, the more you create a negative presence for yourself. And you never know when that's going to come back to you. And I'm going to come back to that because I think social media is a huge part of like why the scene loses its stride or whatever. Another intermediate is just time goes by, and there's no matchup that can beat time. Melee had a point where it was going to die. And I mean, right now, Melee is strong in a sense of like they have new personalities, but weak in a sense of numbers. So it's not like Melee is like really surviving the good fight. They're having a hard time themselves. And that's just what time does, People grow up, they do more stuff that occupies their time, or they find a new hobby, they find love or whatever. And yeah, Father Time's always going to have its hold, but you never know. There might be a new wave of people that start to play. That might be the thing. Another thing that I hear, which I don't agree with at all in Colorado, is like the meta. And I think the meta is like a cover-up word for someone else is playing a certain way and it works and they win, and I don't want to have to deal with that. Because the cover-up for that is just like, what? You say, oh, it's Kazuya, or oh, it's Steve. But in reality, in Colorado, what Kazuya or Steve do we have that's really causing you all this trauma and heartache? And you can't be like, oh, it's the out-of-state tournaments, especially if you never went to one. So why are you stressing about something you're not experiencing? You know what I mean? Like, why think and dwell so hard on the what if of something? What if you're really good against Steve? You don't know that. So to be like, oh, it's the characters, the way that people are playing, they're playing slower, the meta. I kind of get the slower thing if you're an aggressive person and people are realizing that there's actually 7 minutes and there's no reason to like fight for the entire 7 minutes and they can pick their shots. Some people getting upset about that, I get that. But like, and thank you for the follow, Kova. But like, to blame the characters, really, especially if you go into another fighting scene, you'll start to realize that most fighting game scenes, their mindset is not to patch the character as much as possible and to go on extremely long tangents. Some people do, but the conglomerate of Smash does that, and that's a negative perception of like what you should do. It should be a celebration that there's a new challenge to figure out. Not the world is ending, my career is over. Bro, you were already going 0-2. You weren't about to spring up into nothing. So to say like it's a new character, I kind of get that. But like, if the character's not in your region, then why does it matter? At that point, I think you're really focusing towards a player. Like if a new player arrives and they play lame as hell, and you can't seem to find a way past the lame as hell, and you're calling that the new meta. First of all, meta means the conglomerate of people. And I can tell you now, there's still a lot of glue huffing activity going on. So it's not like you can't get it in with somebody who's still a glue huffer who presses a lot of buttons or whatever. But I think if you're putting the benefactor of, I don't like the way that this person plays and this person wins, which means that this is my perception of how the game must go, then I need to get out of here. I think you're forgetting a lot of aspects of like, well, number one, you control some of that. You know what I mean? Like you can get better at dealing with it. It's a challenge. I mean, you're at a competition. It makes sense. It's an obstacle that you have to get past. But two, to hold it past the person. especially to hate them for the character that they play is like, bro, come on. There's something about your character that's obnoxious. Don't act like you're a saint. Don't, show up at, for example, and be like, oh man, I just can't stand Game and Watch. What is Terry to do in this world? Bro, did you hear what you said? Terry? Again, that's gotta be a you thing. Oh, drama's up there. Don't worry, Kova. We'll get there because drama, I think, is probably the biggest thing. But I think there's elements to the drama that people haven't done. Hat oddball, yeah. Four Yoshis in a region is pain. And I mean, Kova, I'm telling you, Sonic loses to Yoshi. But at the same time, for me, if I care about the game, I don't really care about that. I'm playing Sonic. I'm already the problem. Have you played against Sonic and just like really considered what's happening? Especially Kova, bro. You love to run. You're a track star. You will run until the clock runs out. And I'm starting to learn that same thing, like on a if need be factor. But that's my point. Like to just point it toward there's 89 characters, and not every time you're gonna see that Yoshi. And if you see that Yoshi, to me in competition, there's a satisfaction of figuring it out. But if you're at a point where you feel like the answer needs to be hand-fed to you, or the character just needs to be reduced to nothing so you can feel better about yourself, that's an internal problem. Because who wants that from a competition? I thought the point was to face friction, but to just keep picking and choosing what the friction is and assume that another game will have a different friction that you spice with is such a weird, like, I don't get why that's your process. Because I can think of too many games where there's a character that's just ridiculous and it's the same concept but a different game. So, but I mean, that's an intermediate problem. People take like that as like a reason to quit and a reason to get mad. And the problem with those people is they take it out into the world and they throw their negative comments in areas where you only have so many characters to respond. And negativity wins there every time. That's what makes Twitter like a rough spot, because if you say like, oh, it's impossible to do something, it's really hard to get past all the arguing points that it's not impossible. And it's hard to win that bout. And because when it comes to conversations and arguing in the first place, the person that says less is the winner. And if you're trying to convince somebody of something in a space where less words is power, I mean, it's a lost cause. So knowing that like you entered a competition and got mad because someone was acting competitive within the competition or has the same type of feeling that you have or whatever, like they're passionate about their character, and I guess in this case we could use Yoshi or whatever. They love Yoshi. They got a Yoshi tattoo on their left ass cheek. They love Yoshi so much. But you have to like show some type of hatred to the person for being great with the character that they send with. Like that's just stupid. It's so stupid. And I mean, a lot of the time we're blowing the problems out of proportion. Like I remember when Bayonetta came out and watching MK Leo lose the second week of Bayonetta coming out to a person I've never heard of. The second week, Steve took 22 weeks before people figured out what he could do. And it wasn't even like 7 to 9 to 15 Steves, and they weren't winning the tournament. They were like edging, and yeah, they weren't the greatest players, but maybe they found something that really works for them, or maybe it's just because they understand that in this type of scenario, people really don't try to learn. They just hope to God that someone shows up and fixes the problem. Yeah, I respect that, Kova. And I've been hit that point, you know what I mean? Yeah, and again, man, I'm telling you, with competitions, I mean, in this case, I feel like, again, some people want it spoon-fed. But I think that's where the FGC is great. And the reason why I say that is because fighting games are very linear. There's obviously a science to it, and I'm not speaking from some, like, well, I watched a fighting game tournament once, and I get this down. No, I've entered fighting game tournaments, and I typically place top 3 in whatever game I enter. The beauty of fighting games for me is that like the concept of like, bait and punish and stuff like that, because you're locked on to one target, there's not a bunch of platforms or random distractions. To me, it's like simpler. Um, and so I think when it's more spoon fed like that, and you kind of understand the concept is to find your combo thing and just do that. Some people feel like there's more happening in their favor because the character models are bigger, the hitboxes are bigger. So even a mistake looks like an intentional hit, where a smash, there's more precision. And the more precision takes a while to get down. And Kova's right. I mean, no, Smash is so much harder. You have no idea, Kova, what traditional games I can just start playing and in like a couple weeks, even anime fighters, couple weeks, mixing the shit out of people. The hard thing about traditional fighters is there's more to memorize, and it takes people a while to get those steps down. But because I started with traditional fighters, getting the memory of like how things work to me makes way more sense. And what makes traditional fighters easier, like I said, is that it's just straightforward. I think it's a lot harder to master Smash because it's not straightforward. Yeah, Smash is weird, but it's because it's a hybrid. It's a platformer, right? So sometimes you have to play like you're playing a boss in a Mario game. And you just have to move around until the person makes a mistake. They make a mistake, you hit them. What's a mistake? Doing really big move that takes forever. And I'm saying this simply because some people don't get that. Do big move takes forever. Doing stuff that's committal, like certain jumps in certain spots, double jumping is committal because then you have to burn resources. Rolls are committal, spot dodges are committals, whiffed grabs are committal. So sometimes you have to treat you have to hear the stupid in your head and just play like you're playing a platformer. But sometimes you got to scrap. You got to know how to fight up close. You have to know how to play a game of chicken. You have to know like what people's conditions are. And yeah, Blue, the best button on the controller is no button because it has 0 frames used. Yeah, and that's again, Kova, I get that. And some people don't realize in your camping there's a habit, and if they don't see the habit, then the match goes on forever, not because you're camping, but because they refuse to approach because they're scared of like, what if I get it wrong? But long story short, a lot of people run into an obstacle, and if this obstacle is attached to a person that they don't like, then they feel like this person is winning in a perspective where they feel they should win because they play at a certain honorable level or whatever the problem may be. And in a generation where you're given so many options, it's so easy to just keep quitting stuff and throwing it to the wayside. It happens all the time. And the biggest lesson for quitting is not to quit when it's hard, but to quit when you're on top and you feel like you still need to leave. You know what I mean? So, I mean, some people just kind of need to learn how to find a way to tank through it, but that's a reason why people leave. They find something attached to something, they start piecing stuff together, you know what I mean? And it turns into a toxic thing. And that toxicity, again, travels online where people start to express their opinions a little too freely and they start to go on long tangents about what they hate. But I think it's an inner hatred towards the person or inner hatred towards yourself for not being able to do the thing, especially if you're used to things happening instantly. One big thing that you have to remember is that Smash is a 3-year invention and you're a 55 million year invention. And back then, things never came fast or easy. It took time and it took pain. If you feel that pain, that's a motivator to do something. It shouldn't be something to relinquish your entire hopes and dreams of being that top player. If you really wanted to be that top player, then you have to think like a top player. What would a top player do to get past that? But again, if you don't have that concept going in, or if you have like a certain level of like where you're going to take this game and you don't see you passing that breach, I get why you leave. So that's whatever. You know what I mean? I say it's intermediate just because at the end of it, you usually attach it to somebody doing the thing that you wanted to do. And, they're doing it better than you with the things that you don't like about the game. And for you, it's like a further explanation that, oh, they're pushing this agenda and this is the meta. But, I mean, you just have to consider the fact that, like, that's kind of how it works. That should be your enemy, should be your nemesis, it should be your motivator. So yeah, that's the intermediate stuff. Just not liking the game, and usually not liking the game because it's attached to a stigma of a meta. Keep in mind that the meta is usually, or the meta air quotes, is usually something bigger. It's not the smaller picture. It's the bigger picture you need to be worried about. Not enough people realize that like 90% of the players are not doing the thing that you hate. It's 10%, which is great, which means you get to have your fun with the 90%, but now it's about finding a way to piece that puzzle together to beat that 10%. That's where the competition comes in. If you're a competitive person, if you're not, I get it. You know, you hate A, B, and C person because they do annoying thing and you always have to run into them because it's redundant. The next thing that's really, really big, and this is more on the aggressive side, is how both sides of the spectrum failed at their roles. And this one's important because it sounds like an attack, but I need you to understand that it's an observation and it's whatever you want to do. I feel like in the springs, specifically, we have like our top players and our lower players, but everyone meshes well together. You don't ever feel like you can't approach someone or talk to someone. It feels like a conglomerate of like fun people or whatever. And people are kind of, it's like a small town. People kind of keep doing the same thing no matter what the situation is. But it's cool because it's a scene. You guys can hang out after, go to some like late night place or whatever and eat some food. You got your friends, you got your homies. Bracket kind of matters because it gives you like the dopamine of like, oh, there's some pressure on the line, or I feel like I'm getting better. So the springs is all right, but I think a lot of them are just kind of dulled out by the boringness of it. But when I went to Denver, especially in the beginning, the Denver players had this weird sense of like unusual Saiyan pride on all aspects of Saiyan pride. There's so many people that like believe that walking in the room, that they're the greatest already. Like it's over, and so because they think they're the greatest, they kind of walk into the room with their own solo mindset. They're not going to talk to you, especially if they've never heard of you, especially if they've never seen you in some part of bracket. And they feel like somehow keeping to yourself keeps this ninja secret of like, this is how I'm going to achieve the goal. And when they lose, they hold on to like, yeah, basically walking out, dick swinging all over the place. And then when they lose, they have such a hatred and an anger because, again, it goes back to like what they thought was going to work based off of like, oh, this is it. This is big shit. And then it doesn't work out. And that anger turns into such a negative energy. So the fact that you're all walking in and assuming you're going to win, even regardless of what practice you've done, regardless of what character you've played, and then you lose, it's not even anime syndrome. Because think about it this way. All your anime characters are like happy-go-lucky idiots who have like a natural calling to something, right? And I think that's where the natural synergy stops. And it's not that they're taking it serious, Kofa. Trust me. Some people think it's that. That's not it. That's not it. It's that they think it's supposed to be gifted to them. They think like because they put some mental power into something, it's supposed to be gifted to them. And then they hold that to their chest. Like, if it's not gifted to me right now, I have every right to be upset. But that's not how a competition works, bro. We're all thinking the same thing. So how do you figure? You know what I mean? You have to figure out what the competition is, and then you have to figure out how to play within those realms. But to just like completely isolate yourself and not talk to anybody and not, yeah, everyone's the protagonist. Nah, one of you is the punching bag. One of you is the thug in the alley that's like, what are you gonna do? Yeah, someone's got to be him. Someone's got to be him to make the protagonist. You know what I mean? There's got to be an idiot with the cross-eyed, the purse. I don't see you being much of a threat. Like, someone's got to be him. And it just might be you. But when you walk into a competitive whatever, the thing that you should do is take all your competitive synergy, your problems, your energy. You manifest that with yourself when you're practicing, when you're thinking about the game. So then when you walk through that door, you let go. And that's still taking it serious, but it's understanding how to be within a room while doing that. So the fact that everyone doesn't know how to do that and they walk in like you're all dead, and then they fail, it turns into negative energy so fast. And it turns into this cocky energy. And the players that really do it the most are the players that are at the top of the list. But it's because they feel like, I mean, it clearly works. They get to the top and they feel like not addressing people is the strategy of how you stay great. No, we're a community. At the end of the day, this weekly doesn't mean as much as you say it does. It's a training ground. And if you're serious about the game, there should be somewhere you're going after this. It shouldn't be just ESF. And that's the dream. Because if you treat it like that, then you treat all your community like they're the enemy, but it's your community. These are your friends at the end of the day. These are the people where you go to the big tournament, they need to cheer for you. But if you always give off this negative energy, like they don't fucking matter until they get to me, like how are you building a community? You're tearing it down. The bottom feels like they're worthless and useless. Now, in some cases, this should like encourage you to want to be better because you want to have that conversation with that person just to show them what's up, bitch. Now you got to talk to me. We got to make eye contact. I agree to that. But at the same time, it's a community. It's not nationals, dog. Like, chill out. Chill out. You are at the weekly. Talk to the people you don't normally talk to. Get to know your strangers. Be helpful to people. Yeah, but because Blue Nimbus, I understand the FGC. That's what they do. None of them ever look at you and be like, so you're small fry, huh? You ain't shit. It's going to take you 7 years to... No, bro, that's not how you do it. Or they don't brush against your shoulder and keep walking past you because they think they're better. This happened to me in Ultimate like 2 months after the game came out. There'd be people like... What? There'd be people I would disintegrate in Smash for. There'd be people I would obliterate in Smash 4. I show up to an Ultimate Weekly. Died. Oh, are you sure? Still says live for me. Smashing Illuminati got him. Bro, what are you talking about? Alright, I gotta pull this up. Hold up. Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. There goes my handsome face. Oh, it's muted. Yeah, I'm straight. Okay, I was gonna say, bro, what? I was in the middle of the climax of that speech. Anyways, but no, that's exactly what it is. It's the FGC mentality. Because the FGC, they've lived life. That's the biggest difference. Most of these motherfuckers have done nothing but watch anime, and they don't understand that, like, at the end of the day, the best way you're going to get better is if you improve the community. And once you start ending up higher in that list of, like, top players, you got to learn how to treat somebody who's never been in your spot. So, you know what I mean? Like, oh, this is Sunny? I didn't know this was Sunny. What's up? Blue, yo, you mess with me with this alias. That's crazy. Sunny in my stream. What are the chances? When would I never think this would happen. And you don't do the ooey-oos and shit. I didn't I didn't know. But anyways, so yeah, the beauty of the FGC is like they've grown and understood that like at the end of the day, this weekly is not what determines anything. What's up, Andu? Dang, whole bunch of people. I love it. The old school people. But this weekly is not what determines your skill level necessarily. It's really about what you're supposed to be doing on the broad horizon. If you're trying to be a gatekeeper by and treating people like, you know, if you're trying to treat people like shit as they come up in the scene, I mean, that's a great reason for them to leave. Because they're not obligated to come back and do whatever. At the end of the day, it's almost like they're funding the top player anyway. So you got to be a little more grateful to the people around you. Learn how to talk to your surroundings. Learn how to, like, embrace the fact that these people are here for the same reason you are. It's because they love the game, not because everyone's trying to be some villain towards you or whatever. So always remember that. Always come in with, like, a mindset that it's not like that. But at this point, it's definitely more of, like, I don't know, the higher up the player goes, the more they feel like they can talk to anybody any old kind of way or treat them any old kind of way. And they're not really about being helpful either. I don't blame people who don't know how to answer the question, any advice, because that is a very general question. And sure, the the notation of like ask better questions has been passed out. But I mean, it's your community, man. Learn how to feed your community. Learn how to give some hope to somebody. Learn how to be there for the people around you. You know what I mean? Don't just make it about yourself. And that's what the FGC has that like Smash doesn't. And yeah, it could be a nationwide thing. I feel like if you go to different states, it's probably going to be the same situation of like you go to the weekly of 21 people and the dude that usually wins has got his chest all puffed up like he's some type of fucking bird or something. But like that's not how you want to represent your scene. There's got to be something about you that makes the scene inviting. And not just your online presence. It's got to be you as a person, in person. And I'm saying it from a perspective that's been treated like that from everybody, like the top of the list or whatever. You know what I mean? I've been treated like that by basically the entire PR, whether they knew me from Smash 4 or not. And it just sucks to know that like they took this game in a different direction that made them almost dark. So for the top players, you just got to understand that like this is a scene that you're creating based off of the hype and the presence you give at the end of the tournament. But be somebody that we can relate to at the beginning. If you need to get away, you get away, but don't be an asshole to people and just why? So that's one problem, right? The second problem is the old school versus the new school. The old school versus the new school. So one thing that the old school people have to learn to do is take new school people under their wing and show them what to do and what not to do. What is etiquette? Because it shouldn't be that like you guys are facing against each other. You should be working with each other. If some new school person is crossing a line somewhere, some old school person's got to be there to let them know, because then that creates a more of like a peaceful atmosphere. Once things break, you can kind of piece it back together. But if it's just like an old school player watches a new school player do something crazy or erratic and they're not there for them, or they turn towards them, or and they go against them and they're yelling at them, then it turns into a shout match. And when it turns into a shout match, then you have this rivalry and you start to take sides. Once you start to take sides, the community starts to die because you're going against two different houses of religion or something. But really, what should have happened is the old school players should have set the stage for how the new school players should act. But to know that, like, you came into this whole situation and, you're acting like you're a big bad or whatever. And that's the impression you gave to people. Like, you have to be a dick to everybody to kind of show them who's boss. Then that explains why, like, the aura is so negative, because some of the old school players failed to bring that community sense to the new school players. You know what I mean? So it's tragic to see that the old school players didn't do a better job at like setting the stage, but I feel like we were also blessed with a lot too soon, and we were severely ungrateful for it, because the venues that we have are freaking stupid. If you think about like the FGC, their venues are so small, their weeklies are typically tiny, but that keeps them humble and wholesome. We've gotten to the pinnacle and we don't know how to act. You know what I mean? We make it seem like every venue is bad, and it's just like for dumb shit. Like, they don't have my favorite water. What type of, like, bro, you're not a celebrity. We're still playing a children's video game. Relax. Give back to your community. We don't do that enough. We get to a venue and we'll trash that place like no other. And because we treat it with such disrespect, we don't understand what we have. And honestly, we should probably lose a lot of our stuff and have to start over and really learn what it is to be humbled by, like, the fact that, like, it's amazing that we have it. I love local hosts, but I just don't love the way that people act and treat local hosts as if, like, this is, like, they earned this. They didn't earn anything. Most of you have kind of just jumped into the inheritance, and this comes from the effort of the people who push the community forward from a TO perspective. Now, the TO perspective is probably one of the biggest points, too. I think the problem with the TO perspective is on a lot of different sides of things. It's not just the dark music. It's not just like the players disrespecting the TOs. It's also the TOs going behind the players' back. Andu, yeah, I don't think that'll ever change, dog. um, I kind of hate it because I want to find like that small group of people to practice with, but I never do find that group of people. By the time I find them, they're like, they have defeatist syndrome where they just don't want to do anything. And it's just about practicing for like an hour. But I'm a crackhead. I'll go crazy with the practice. If someone's trying to do some serious sessions, if they want to set up like an area where you got to put money in, the more you lose that money, something like that. I'm down to do whatever. I do what it takes to win. I do what it takes to improve, and I love that. And we had that when I had my house or whatever. You know what I mean? But anyways, with the TOs versus the players, I think the biggest thing that the TOs, well, first of all, we got to give kudos or credit where credit is due, because again, our TOs. I came in to the competitive scene with a dude named Dancing Fighting Greg, and although Dancing Fighting Greg, wait, who is the lady tamer? Who is this? And see, now you got to reveal yourself. What's all these aliases? I respect Andu coming in as Andu. I know who Andu is. Xandrite. This man taming ladies. Hey, man, well, now you know. I'm about that grind. I'll play online. I'll show up to your house 2 a.m. I don't care. I think, Sonny, you would like Xandrite. Xandrite's a wholesome dude, man. He's got a sharp mentality, too. That's why I want to coach him. But he still hasn't approached me yet. He's shy. He's a little nervous dude. Anyway, so the biggest thing you have to do is give the TOs props for reaching out the ways that they do to find the stuff that we had. People don't know about all that in a bag of chips. And even then with Brawl, people don't know about the basement tournaments. The fact that people would like let you in their house to do a tournament in their basement is crazy. Yeah, I gotta call you out. No, but anyways, so the fact that the TOs start from like ground zero and they keep building this scene, you know, higher and higher, and then the fact that they got us to where we are is crazy. And again, it's not talked about enough, especially with like Dan Combo starting the barrage, and the fact that like no matter what happened, we always got somebody. Yeah, ATA was something, wasn't it? And if you guys didn't know what ATA was, it was this place called All That in a Bag of Chips. It was in some ghetto neighborhood. I don't think it was in Denver. It was Aurora, Colorado. And in the beginning, it was all right, especially when the owner was there. But when he branched out, brother, did it get bad. The carpet was sticky. There was like 4 teenage kids running the shop. People were stealing your shit all the time. So you had to like hold on to everything for dear life. But I'm still glad that Dan found a way to shine a camera on us. Because in the beginning, you have to remember. Oh, and Dan shows up randomly all the time. He's my NPC of my real life. Every 2 years, he'll just appear and be like, oh, how's it going? And I don't get it. He shows up unannounced. And you're like, I mean, weren't you like in, you know, some other third world country, like building houses or some shit? But the fact that like he was willing to shine the light on us, because honestly, it was all about PM and Melee, and we were treated like some type of third party thing, even though we were the bigger game. We'd have like 60 people in our bracket, they'd have like 25, and somehow they got all the stream, the fancy equipment. Yeah, he's every shot. I'm telling you, he's an NPC. He's not real. I don't think he was born. I think he was created in a lab. Conspiracies. Anyways, but the fact that he did everything that he did was great. I think the disconnect happened when he tried to set up a way to create money. He needed to generate money, and it made sense. I just don't understand why people, every time we hit that point, are surprised that like a TO needs to do that. I hate the fact that like people come at the TO sideways, and I feel like there's got to be a better way to deal with like people questioning the TO's antics. And these are the TOs that like actually go above and beyond to create a better whatever. You know, they find us a better venue, they find better incentives, they find ways to get prize pools, they find ways to get better streaming equipment, they find ways like oh my gosh, what is his name? The one that's created our layouts for the tournaments right now. You know what I mean? Like oh my god, what is his name? You know the dude what is his name? I can't believe I forgot. He's the one that made like the cutscene things. You know what I mean? Like when the characters come in, it's got ESF, it's in green, and your characters do the whatever. The fact that like he wasn't really treated with the best respect, and people didn't like fund him as much as they could. I just hate the fact that some players feel like this was gifted to them, and it's the TO's fault for taking the job. Like I don't understand what you expected to happen, especially if you want something to grow. I respect all the TOs of the past. Troy, I mean, not every last one of them. I mean, Dan was not Dan like Danakey, but like Daniel Hale, not the greatest. But for the TOs that like went above and beyond to make the experience great, especially like Smash 4, some of those brackets were so memorable. And to have the mindset that they shouldn't get paid for making a memory for you is crazy. So the fact that players feel entitled to it and they've earned it or deserved it is stupid, because these people had to reach out to random places and see who was going to be like, you know, who's going to be the next person to bring us in, who's going to be the next growth or whatever. So I hate the fact that TOs are treated like that, but I also don't like when TOs just try to slide it your way by creating a venue fee that doesn't exist. So in my head, I think the next time we have a TO and they got a vision and they're trying to do big things or whatever, we let them. What's the problem with giving the dude some extra money for perking things up and helping his way of life? I don't understand the concept of getting mad at someone for that, because it just makes us look better. But it makes you look worse if you're unappreciative and you're telling the dude to do it for free. This is not community service. You don't get anything from the government for running a tournament. But if you got paid for it, and if you can find a way to keep increasing the technology, the streaming equipment, pay the person who's streaming, there's people going out of their way to make your tournament better. So appreciate them. And that goes mainly towards the old school players, because I see like they typically point that out and they try to like make these people feel bad for it. But I don't think they should feel bad. I mean, I think, again, they should be a little more clear, because sometimes they try to sneak those charges past you. But, like, the fact that they found a hustle and they're finding a way to make money, and the fact that you have a place to show your skills, that should be a common ground for peace. You know, just let it be. Like, someone's doing the most. I mean, I respect the shit out of Steak Fox. He was putting on a show. I haven't seen too many TOs who can save a tournament series through a COVID pandemic by finding creative ways to get people in and create a place for younger people to have some type of environment to learn and play video games, to have some type of comfort place. Why would you fight against that? What is there to fight against? Dude, he was leveling us up. He was doing an immaculate job, and then he finally got us back into our building, local host. You know what I mean? So I just never understood like why someone would like fight against that. You said, do you think Smash was at its best for the last 4 days? Does it seem like our ultimate scene isn't as crazy hype as it used to be? The way I see it, I think Smash Ultimate was hard to get into because everyone had some keen expectation of something that was supposed to happen. The stories were richer in Smash 4, but that's because there's always somewhere to go. And in Ultimate, I feel like we've reached that pinnacle where you get pushed past it. And again, when Steak Fox did that big yearly tournament, the dungeon, that was hype as shit. That's the point. There was something to build up to. There was a story to be told. Kronos told his story there. Everything was amazing. That was hype as shit. But right now we're at a point where like anytime a TO tries to do something like that, we find negativity in it and we have to shit on them for it. So we can't find that growth. Right now, in terms of like a competitive sense, I think some of the players are great. And in terms of like a national sense in the world, I think that we have a chance to put more of an impact than we ever did in the past, Andu. But we don't have the heart as a community. We just have the heart of an individual, and it sucks. Like Smash 4, we can go on for hours about the fun stories of the past and like these legacies and these sagas, but right now we just got a bunch of weeklies and doing stuff that doesn't really matter. We haven't found a way to make the scene like this story, but I think it's because the people who want to tell the story, we do a great job at tearing them down. without realizing, like, that's the reason we have a story in the first place. Is the TO. The TO was the first person that saw the vision, and with that vision, let them run with it. Now, if they're asking for ridiculous stuff like a mandatory $100 donation, yeah, that's stupid. But if they're asking you to pay $10 instead of $5 to put $5 in their pocket, or $5 for whatever growth, then I mean, it is what it is. So long as they show benefit of it. I don't have much respect for the TOs that just do that just to collect the money, and then that's it, and then you don't see anything else. They don't put it towards, like, I'm saving towards a stream. They don't give you an incentive. They don't let you know there's a goal. They're not, none of that. Like, why make them do so much more work, like get a second job or something, when we can help them? Nintendo doesn't help, so where the hell are they going to get the money from? Whereas, like, a fighting game, someone from a developer could reach out to you and be like, if you do this work, we'll give you this, and if you show progress in this. We don't have that. So you have to understand that we're in this together. So yeah, basically the answer to your question is, like, we don't have that story because we're not giving into the thing that gives us growth. If you find a TO that's passionate, man, hug that dude. Let that dude do his thing. Let that guy or girl, whoever, they, them, let them have their thing. Let them handle that. We have to be behind them as a community and understand that they're taking us to higher heights. We had that and we lost that, and we never know if we're going to get that again. I mean, we got lucky in the past. We had Dan, we had Thars, we had Forrest. That's his name. I was trying to think of his name. We had Forrest. We had Steak Fox. Like, we can't keep burning people as if, like, we know what we're talking about. Another thing that, so, like, you know, burning down the TO and making sure that the TO understands that, like, if they send a money incentive, it's got to go towards something, and there's got to be growth, is huge. They are the producer of our story, and if we don't give them anything to produce with it, there's no production work. It's just going to be mundane and boring and dull. And a lot of people, like, a lot of TOs, like, how can you live with that? Like, they're not backing you, and they're always trying to create some type of other problem, which is where that whole thing of the old school players needing to know how to respectfully tell the new school players if they cross the line or etiquette is huge. And we didn't do that. We just made it seem like people were supposed to know walking in the door what to do. And with that, it makes these new school people kind of standoffish and weird. It's hard to connect to someone that's new. But it's because we're not working together to do it. I almost feel like people think it's supposed to be handed to them. But again, in Smash 4, I feel like a lot of stuff was handed to us. Oh, what's up? Yeah, Shu, but I'm going to put it on YouTube. Don't worry, you'll see it. So far, I've covered some basic stuff, Shu. I covered, like, the basic reasons for why, like, someone might leave the scene, and that's just, like, you don't have a drive to do whatever it is you're doing, or, you know, you found a new hobby, life happens. Intermediate stuff, what was that, is blaming the meta, finding a target to blame, or because the game doesn't play to your likings, you treat the game as if it's the problem, you know what I mean? And especially if you attach it to a player, like if there's a Game & Watch that's always wrecking you, you start to talk about it as if the Game & Watch is the entirety of the meta or something like that. And once you start to treat the Game & Watch like they're the entirety of the meta, and that's one person, then you make it seem like the whole game operates around their basis, and because the game doesn't play the way you want it to, you spread that negative message on Twitter, where it's hard to argue that point, and boom. The big stuff I just started, and one of the biggest things is old school players not treating the new school players, bringing them into the scene and showing them what the etiquette is. That's what a lot of FGC people will do. They'll see you're new, they greet you, they kind of walk you through some things, and if you cross the line, they let you know. But in Ultimate, that never happened. A lot of the Smash 4 players were new, and we came in this together, and we got lucky. But, like, we didn't strike the lottery twice with that. We kind of failed a lot of the new people. And not everybody. I talk to as many new people as I can. But I'm not always pleasant to talk to if I'm not in a good mood, so. But, I mean, I feel like it's more of a war of old school versus new school instead of a community drawing together to understand we're in the same boat and that we're passing down a legacy. So whenever we leave, it'd be great to know that we can look back and things are going great. The other big thing is that TOs are treated with a certain disrespect if they come to you with a notion. I know in the FGC some TOs aren't given money, but some of those TOs are given incentives from big companies so they can expand and grow on whatever it is they want to do if they want to. But most of it is mom and pop shop type stuff. And with Smash, the TOs that have helped us the most are the TOs that need a little bit of incentive to grow. And the fact that we fight against that doesn't make any sense. It'd be different if they're collecting a venue fee from you that's non-existent, like we're not paying for the venue at all, and they're giving it to us out of the kindness of their heart, but they never disclose that. They just make it seem like, oh yeah, the venue needs your money, because that's shady. And if they're showing shady business, they're showing shady business. But if every time you give them money, they produce something, an example being Steak Fox, we gave him money and we got a big tournament out of it, basically. If they're producing something out of it, then I feel like we have to stand behind them and honor them, because they're kind of the producer to our story. And if you think about it, we haven't really had a really prominent story in Ultimate that says like, oh, there's this combative rivalry or whatever, like the JFK versus X, and then you have the TO who sets the stage for a big tournament with a salty sweet, and then that's kind of with like puts it all together. But the TOs and FOCO made a monthly and they were there, and that's where the story started. We don't really have that, but it's because we've done a good job at putting down the TOs in the past. Said hi, Father Samfish, what's up? The other thing that's really bad, and I say this is really bad, I say this is more controversial, and I say this is a sensitive subject, is that the socialism of the world has changed a lot. And because the socialism of the world has changed a lot, how people act has changed a lot. I think this is like a great example of like how to blend everything together as a huge conglomerate of what I see as a big problem. Like, let's say you got a problem with somebody right in the scene, and they say something on Twitter, and you take that animosity and you attack them on Twitter. I think that's one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I don't understand the point of attacking somebody online that you're going to see in person when you're not going to address them in person. And I feel like if you're going to attack them online, you at least need to say something in fucking person. Like, if you're going to go about like going through some cancellation process, or if you're going to say, oh, I loathe this person, they're beneath me, say that shit to their face. Because if you're going to create this weird environment where like you take everything online, people are always seeing it for part of the story, number one. Number two, it's a community. You have to deal with this person at some point in time if you plan on ever coming back. So why would you put yourself in a spot to say something indirectly / directly to somebody as if they're never going to see it, or as if you're never going to see that person again? When you talk shit online, maybe you should talk shit online to somebody you don't know, or be able to back it up. Please back it up. Please go in person and back it up. Do not talk shit to somebody, act like you're untouchable, and then when you're in person, act like it never happened. You create this stupid aura in the room, and if you had the balls to say something, please have the balls to back it up. At least turn it into something interesting, another storyline, a money match, something, and make it more about the game. Stop attacking each other about personal stuff. In this case, if you have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. But if you're going to say something vicious, please be vicious about it. And the reason why I'm saying that is because if you can't find the goal to say it to someone in person, you're not going to say it online. That reduces that to a huge thing. Because asking people if they're going to say something nice doesn't always work. But asking someone like, oh, you mean the dude that does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're going to talk shit about him. Are you prepared to fight if things get out of hand? And if they say no, then fuck it. Don't say anything. Be a pussy. Please be a pussy. Because you're creating an environment that like brings in people that have nothing to do with what's going on. And if you create a more of a negative image, that's all you see is darkness. And that makes people leave because they feel like there's no way to get along. And to me, the easiest way to get along is if you're going to bring up a problem, be able to face that problem head on. Do not do this bitch shit where you bring it up and then you run. You know what I mean? I don't get it. I don't get it. So make sure, I mean, that's a big thing that kind of kills the scene. Especially like with online stuff. Because again, if you do it online, then that means that people who don't know you get involved and they only see a part of the story. So they only side with that part of the story, and that just makes the snowball effect much worse. Shu do be fighting monkeys. Shu's a little crazy. And again, I don't know. That's torn down so much. Making something personal and taking it outside of the scene is just stupid. And not being able to deal with your problems with that person inside the scene is also stupid. Make sure, again, if you're going to deal with someone, deal with them in person. I'd rather you do that. It squashes the beef. It doesn't make it turn into a widespread fire. And it makes you really consider what you're willing to say and what you're not willing to say. Yeah, exactly. The reason why they do it online is because they have the plot armor of understanding that if enough people see it, they'll take the one side of the story and they'll run with it. But if you do it in person, it's not going to go down like that. And that's why I'm saying, like, maybe it's better if you just didn't say anything at all. And if you're going to say something, say it in the game. Show it in your play style. Create a little animosity there. But don't make it this huge thing where you feel like you need to put it on the spot. And again, the old school players should have really addressed that like a long time ago. And I feel bad because I feel like since I've been here for a long time, I probably should have said something. But saying something on Twitter will do what? If anything, I would get on commentary, say it, clip it, and then play that shit. So that's kind of my thing. Because coming back into the scene as aggressive as I want to, I want people to realize what a scene is and what a community is. And I'm not saying I'm a leader, but I've been here long enough to know. So I'm not afraid to put motherfuckers in their place. The other thing that's kind of created what was I going to say? It was a really big one. Teabag. Yeah, Teabag. Take the stock in Teabag. You're right. What are you guys doing? They created taunts for a reason. This is why we use taunts. And then I'd say the biggest thing is there's a lot of emotional power put towards stuff that shouldn't receive that type of connotation. If you know how to turbo teabag, Lucario's teabag, it can be massively insulting, by the way. The biggest one to me, though, is that when it turns into the political thing, at the end of the day, most people are trying to achieve some type of greatness, right? You want to see your name on that PR spot. Shu, by the way, congratulations on creating something to look forward to. I like that. The big, tournament with the top players to see who's really the top. I like that idea. That's Shu coming up with an idea. And again, I hope we run behind Shu. I hope we remember who Shu is. And if Shu asks for some type of incentive for something that we don't question Shu and then it turns into a problem, then some Zoomer says something stupid. The Boomer comes out and says something, but it sounds aggressive, so the Zoomer doesn't get it, and it turns into a war. I hope that event is just this fun thing. And you see, that's what I'm saying. There's a 1K pop bonus. Please come out and support that, please. I hope that this event kind of starts to turn some people more into a competitor. I hope like Rydra puts a fire in him and says, you know what, I have something to say and I'm going to make sure I stomp this out. I hope Shu goes fucking bananas. I hope, Kronos, hits us with that volleyball haiku shit and it turns into something cool. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, Sonny, is that if we can keep something in that direction and keep an incentive once we get to the top, that's great. But you want to know what we need to make sure that we need to do to make sure something like this goes right? We need a PR panel that's not biased towards behaviors. I remember in Smash 4, there was a time where someone didn't want to make Bang number one, and it was a group of people because they felt like he would represent us in a way that's immature, and they didn't like his sense of humor, and that was it. And they were willing to find every obstacle to throw in his way so he wouldn't become number one over something petty that had something to do with them personally. And I'm not saying that this PR panel is the same way, but at the same time, they conduct themselves in a way that says maybe there's a lot of bias and people don't actually pay attention to the sake of the game. Because at the end of the day, we're paying attention to what the player does in the game and what the player's potential is, not what joke the player said. And there's something to be said about that, but that's where the old school reprimanding comes in. But we have to find who we direct those people to, I guess. That would be great. But to know that you're like skewing things because it doesn't fit your vision is some bullshit. And we as a scene have to do a lot better with not letting that bullshit happen. And if you're going to elect a PR panel, having the TOs would be number one, but having players who seem to have the community in mind first would be number two. So please, when you make a PR panel, make sure it's not people who are taking a side of an argument or telling you, like, in the shadows, you know what? I think this guy is an asshole. And ever since then, I've had this whole thing of rejecting the asshole for whatever he's going to do. Because then you create a problem you can't backpedal yourself out of. I really do want the cleanest PR known to man in terms of, like, the results speak for themselves. And the people who are in that are great. And again, Shu, I'm going to be active. I'm a coach. I'm paying attention to so many things and you have no idea. So if you do need a PR panel person, I mean, that's literally what I do. I'm a coach. I give feedback. I watch what people do. I'm paid to do that. That's what I do. That's it. There's no bias behind it. It has nothing to do with the person's personality. I don't give a fuck what their hair looked like when they played that day. You know what I mean? So if we're going to have a panel, there can't be this bias of like, well, I have a certain stance and belief and that blah, 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 and we can't go against this. So this is the logic that's going to take place because this person gave me a compliment once. We're not in a fucking presidential debate. The results are primarily in front of you, and you can sense the aura of the people because you're a part of this community. Yeah. And again, that's what I was saying earlier, Ajim, is that did I say that right? Hexik, yo, I have got to stop mixing up your names. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, but I said that earlier. The top players have to stop walking into the room like they're big dick swinging. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why you're walking it. Bro, we are playing a kid's video game. We can't excuse that, Sam Fish. You want to know what? Fucker, I like pineapple on pizza. That's right, bitch. Okay, I'm calling you Andy. We've had this problem forever. By the way, please see my Dr. Mario, because I know Dr. Mario is better than Ganondorf. We still have a situation in our hands, Andy. We have a situation. I feel like you've been ducking me. Oh, you're going to the FGC? That's cool. Still see my Dr. Mario. I don't give a fuck. But Hezek is right. Or Andy is right, that a huge part of it, again, is just people act like they're better than each other, and then they come together with their egos. But you need to have some type of balance. It's a community. We come together because we love something. Remember why you're there. You're not there to talk about what type of gender you think someone should be based off of your perception of whatever. You're not there to make someone feel small and, like, powerless because you can press the buttons better. Because every time we call out assholes on their egos, you're doing it on Twitter, Zan's right. And the problem is, if you're not willing to address the problem in person and you're going to keep it online, it never gets any better. If you're going to call out an asshole, be willing to do that shit in person. I'd rather you do that shit in person. Not school shooter status, chill out. But like, you got to do something. And I am calling out the top players. I'm calling them out to be better because a lot of the problem is them. And again, they all have done it to me, except for like Bang. Bang knows me. She doesn't really do it. But everybody else, if I don't know you, they treat me like I could be talking dead into their face and they will turn away from me. And even the influencers from the scene, they do the same thing. They could be talking about something I am a big fan of. People know I love Sonic. I can mention Sonic to them and they act like I'm not talking to them. And they just continue to talk to whoever the fuck they're talking to. But why? If we all love Sonic, let's love Sonic together. What the hell? You know, that's such a minor thing to do. How is that a problem? That's got to be the biggest vice that turns into all these problems that roll down a hill. Yeah, and your brand spanking new to the scene. But again, let's not... Yeah, my first mistake was talking about Sonic. I love him so much. He spins in a ball. He's such a caring guy. He's got friends. He fights for them. Anyways, but I think the best way to really make the scene better, one, the next time we have somebody who has this sense of direction of where they want to go, I think we follow them. And I think we understand that they're taking us somewhere that we've never been and to be appreciative of where we're going. You know what I mean? You got to understand that. And yeah, Shu, I know you're tired of it, but I have a feeling you're probably going to be stuck with it once that bracket is done. That, like, the gauntlet or the invitational thing. Yeah. Well, you single-handedly make me like Sonic more because your aura sphere is Sonic. Anyways. But no, I don't blame you, Shu, but at the same time, we have to... I think the big thing that we have to do is continue to make more leaders so you don't have to lead as hard. And I'm behind you, Shu. I got your back. I got your back for everything. Whatever you need, I got your back. And remember that. I think you're really bad at reaching out to people. So I think what I'm going to do is just impose my will. I'm just going to come up with something, show up, throw it in your ball court, and you're just going to have to deal with it. But we work together on this. But that's the point. We're not guided by anything because we all think we're the main character without realizing together we can do this. Together we can do this. Remember that. Together we can do this. The word you're missing is community. We haven't been much of a community because we're not acting like one, but it's because we've grown too big for our britches. We have another opportunity on our hands. I need you to hear me out. This tournament is going to be sick. There is an incentive to be a top player. There's an incentive to show up to stuff. Thankfully for Shu. And we have to understand that like with this incentive comes more people, and with more people comes this understanding that it's a part of our responsibility to work together to make sure that these people feel welcome when we treat them with respect and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we do comes from a biased background, but we're not here to talk about what race we are or nothing like that unless it gets brought up in a disrespectful way, which it typically doesn't. It's typically someone's opinion or someone's, I don't know, someone's whatever comment about something. Don't make it a big deal. Not every war needs to be fought. And if you're going to fight the war, realize that you have to fight that war in person. I mean, for the people out there who've lost their drive, I hope you find your story someday again. Because some of you were fun to play with. And I hope that we find more people like the 9-year-old. I think there's like some Steve that goes to tournaments now. I hope we build a big story for that person. And I hope you guys learn that like we have to be responsible for the fact that there's a child there and give that child something to remember as they grow up, because we need them to represent what we used to do. We have to be a better representation of ourselves, and we have to be a better representation of like, how do we reflect that against everybody else? I really hope that this scene turns into something that people are like come in and they're like, fuck man, Colorado smash. Not only are they competitive, but they're wholesome, they're heart-filled, they care about each other. That's all I hope for. We're gonna have a drought. I think we're still blessed with the ability to have somebody who wants to stand up and do stuff. I'm one of those people. I'm setting up scrimmages with random people that I've never played. He's playing Nickelodeon All-Stars, Andrew. He randomly showed up, fizzled and shit, and he was like, "Yeah, bro, I just like pressing buttons." And he's like, "There's not enough buttons in Ultimate." That was it. You're welcome, Andrew. But I mean, if we could find a way to not make everything about ourselves and understand a way to like realize that we're coming together, then I think we have a very, very strong chance of creating more memorable stories, creating a better future, and raising some real champions. That's the first step. And if you want to be the champion dudes, I think a lot of you have to understand how to come together and play like champions, because that's another problem that I have, is that the top players kind of expect somehow the gravity of the lower level to just elevate them somewhere, and if it doesn't, they shit on them. But I mean, if you have a top 5 in your PR, you guys make a grind session together and really make it about something. I can help you do all that. I've done all that. And I'm here to, my goal is to show you people that it's possible, because I've reached the pinnacle of my skill before, and I let life interfere. I'm not letting that happen again. So hopefully with 2023, we don't have this negative connotation anymore. We learn how to reserve what we have to say, and we learn how to understand that we're in this together. We're family. We got to be family again. I miss the family. I miss that entertainment. And if we can bring that back, we can have a permanent scene. It doesn't matter what game is out there. We come there for each other. And remember that. It's about the people around you. The biggest thing about your favorite anime protagonist is that they fucking love the people around you. Imitate that. Don't imitate the part where they had the fucking inner dialogue for 7 minutes talking about how they're going to be great with their 2-minute montage and then they win. Don't imitate that. That's toxic as shit, because that doesn't make sense. You're a 55 billion year invention. That doesn't happen because you said it's going to happen once. You got to say it a lot. And if you want to get better, that's kind of how you do it, but we got to get better together. So that's my input. Long stream. Lovely to see all these people come through. Andy, I like seeing your tweets. I see you're kind of getting a little in the FGC crowd. Everybody is. But at the same time, I hope that like someday if you come back because you're bored, you see that the scene has found a better way to like combat the problems, and they found a better way to come together. But yeah, that's SAC gay. Hopefully you guys see me a lot in the future. I say hopefully because I can make a million plans and something can destroy that all. But I more than anticipate seeing everybody, and I more than anticipate of helping at least what we have to stay strong. I don't even care about the money so much as I care about the respect and the prominence of everyone being together, wanting to get better, and eventually raising the next best number one in the world. And if you believe the same thing, or if you just want to come and have fun, then let's do that. Let's find a way to beat negativity, and let's find a way to be that Smash scene that's just that different. Anyways, y'all have a good night.